Speaking of, I want to introduce you to a friend, a brother, Mr. Free the Vision. Hello,
Uh,
welcome.
hello, man.
How
That
are
first of
you
all,
today?
I'm well, but I'm very blessed to hear that prayer that you just delivered. Like that was life right there. So you've always
Oh,
been a praying one, and this is something that we've done together.
yes,
But to
yes.
see you with Shanti just makes me so excited and so happy.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. She shared, just how we've been connected, or I've been connected to her through you. But
Hmm.
this was years in the making. This was years in the making because we've been friends for how long? Since fifth grade?
Oh man, yeah, between there and seven. So I mean, it's been at this point at least over 20 years. We're
Wow.
like our friendship on a person would be an adult.
Right. They would be they
They'd
would
be
be
a
in college
whole
right now.
right. There'd be a whole college party and drinking adult. That's where our friendship has gone.
Yes, and this is also divine because Shanti was sharing things that you shared as we were preparing for this interview. Um, but
Mm.
but it's all around relationships, right?
Hmm.
And forming your circle of support as you're pursuing your purpose, and how your circle might change. Someone in the comments said, "Go Freedom Rams." That's my aunt. That's my aunt right there. She teaches at Freedom now.
Yeah, oh, does
and
she? That's
and
hilarious.
every time I go back to old schools or old neighborhoods, oh my God, it just brings back all of these memories, these
I'm
feelings.
telling
I'm
you. And the schools that felt so big while we were in them feel so small now going back into it. Like you feel like,
like,
God, I guess
exactly.
I've grown, you know?
Exactly. Yes. Wow. So, talk about, your life journey and evolving. I feel like you're probably someone that has seen me evolve the most aside from my parents and my family.
And maybe even them some days. So
Right. So, all of you all who are tuning in right now, you are seeing, a fresh conversation from years of friendship.
Mhm.
And you know, I believe the relational shift here that God wants us to see is to value relationships again. Like,
Mhm.
value relationships again. Because someone reminded me that it's actually very rare for people to now have friendships for years. Like, that's become a rare
Mhm.
thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, but when when getting into the relational shift, I kind of want to start with, you know, everyone has a moment where they feel like they have arrived or they're finally have started a path of purpose, right? And
Mhm.
so for you, you have recently been on your journey, for about 6 years in terms of, entrepreneurship. And
Right.
moving in your craft. Everyone has that day where they've decided to pursue like their gifts and their dreams. And so, what as you look back over this 6 years, like, what would you tell yourself from the beginning, like knowing where you are now?
Mhm. So honestly, for me, I have a very deep and spiritual relationship with God. It might not always look traditional, but it is definitely always is kismet and honest and raw and direct and beyond me. Um, so when I got fired from my job, which I knew was coming because speaking of the shift,
Mm,
in my belief, whenever it is time for you to get ready to move, all of the things and it's all evolving. It literally everything
mhm.
is evolving. So you prayed for this position. When you got this position, the position was great. I was making more money than I had ever made at that time, and was
Yeah.
proud of myself and happy. to have this job. Um, and my atmosphere was so tailored to me. It was so like perfect to be in that corporate position with Comcast at the time. But when it started becoming time for me to get ready to move, God shifted the atmosphere before God shifted me. So all of
Wow.
those things that made me comfortable, and that's been the pattern of my experiences. A lot of the things that
Mm,
make me comfortable start to leave. So whether it's a person that you might be super cool with that you can't wait to get to work and kick it with, they
mm,
get a new position or something happens there. And now you're kind of like,
right.
dang, things are changing. Your favorite manager is no longer your manager. There's organizational shifts.
Yeah.
There's like, um, your resources shift. Like everything that initially made this the perfect and most ideal setting for you no longer exists. And so you start to feel disconnected so that when it's time for you to move, because it is time for you to move, you can make that move a lot smoother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, looking back, the day that I got fired, God had already been sending me signs that I was about to leave, the company. And when I walked out of the door after being fired, and I mean signs. When I say signs,
Mm,
they like God and me have like this thing. I always look for three signs to know that it's from God. Like the first one, maybe
mm,
that's coincidence. The second
right.
one, somebody's doing something. The third one is like
Right.
I can't deny, right? Third time's a charm. So three is my number. A woman who I saw in passing in the company, me and her got on the elevator together, and without like saying anything, it was almost like some like movie stuff. But she had like dropped her head on the back of the elevator and was like, "This cannot be life." Like waiting for Fridays.
Mm,
And she looked at me and like just stared at me, and the doors opened and she walked off. It was like the weirdest
whoa.
situation. So I called a friend and told him like I feel like something's coming, and he was like, "Well, that means that you're not about to be there for long." That was like let's say on Friday, or that was let's say on Thursday, really, because I took Friday off. That was on Thursday. On Monday, I was fired. So putting it in
Wow.
that kind of context, and when I walked out of the building, like I said, three is my number. Okay,
Yeah.
in my head, I heard God say, like, 3 years. I just heard 3 years. And
Right.
I honestly was like, oh, no, the hell, it won't be 3 years. It may be three
Oh,
weeks. I'm going to do 3 months, but
not
three
3 years.
years, I can't do. And 3 years later, by the time that I ended up meeting Shanti, who ended up becoming a mentor, and many doors in my life had started to open, and I started cracking the surface of what I wanted to do. I started finding clarity, but clarity for me, honestly, is um, a consistent thing that is happening. Like it's moments where it's like, oh, I know exactly. So now I know exactly what I want to do, how I want to do it. But the understanding of how it will shift and change is always evolving. So to me, years ago, looking back, not to be long-winded and to answer your question, it would be that nothing is forever.
Mm,
Most things that feel big are amplified in your mind more than they are your circumstances.
mm,
Um, at the end of the day, if there is an intention to make some of these things a life goal, then what is your deadline? Like, I
mm.
think a lot of times we may say, like I said, no, I'm not doing no 3 years of no damn
Right.
struggle now. Like what kind of person I got to be struggling for 3 years was my thought process. But some struggle for 10. Some struggle longer and then they see their breakthroughs. So ultimately my perspective is that they call it a and I don't mean to sound morbid when I say it, but they call it a deadline for a reason. Like if you have nothing but space and time, the odds are always likely to be in your favor because anything is possible. So I look at it from like this 50-50 perspective versus like, oh, well, that's not probable. You don't know. I let God handle the what's probable and what's not. For me, I just kind of show up and do what I'm supposed to do. And then let's see how that kind of plays. Some things, some relationships take time to mature. some experiences take time to mature, but along the way, they're feeding you and they're preparing you while you're kind of going through that. So I would give that advice to myself 6 years ago, in that, like, I never probably had a doubt that I wouldn't make it, maybe sooner in certain areas, but if I would was never a question. So I would
Right.
just kind of give myself a message of patience. I wish I could almost like impart a little bit of clarity earlier, um,
Yeah.
and some even kick into where me and procrastination don't hang as much as we
Listen,
had.
listen.
Okay, you know what I
I had
mean.
to let
So
it go recently too. Like, no, it ends here. No, no longer gonna be a thing for me.
yeah, yeah, and it is. So, and it's a generational thing, but
It
that would
is.
be my advice.
Yes. Wow. So so the first 3 years, right? You're like, no, God, it can't take this long. But it in fact was the 3 years.
It
And
was three
you
and a
know,
half.
yeah, 3.5. Come on now. And I actually
Uh,
just said that, 3.5 years into my entrepreneurial journey, I took a sabbatical because I was like, Lord, this ain't working.
I'm about to retire from entrepreneurship. I'm
Right.
on the.
Like, Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
I want to talk about how, one of the things you said you focused on or mentioned was, that was about surviving through the journey, right?
Mm,
And so what was your circle like at that time? What relationships were in your life at the time, for you to survive that part of it, which a lot of it has to deal with what God has to work out of us first, right?
mm,
So he's like, okay, let's start this journey. Because some things we can't even work out of us until we start the work, until we
mhm.
begin the process. But what relationships were in your life at the time that, helped you kind of get through that phase?
Yeah. Let's focus on the ones that helped me, because there were a lot of ones that didn't. Um,
Mm,
which I hung on to because they were comforting, to something in
right.
me that felt as if I needed them. But
Mm,
I've been blessed to have great relationships. I have a lot of people that I talk to or have been able to put in position that are like some are therapists now.
mm,
A perfect example of someone who but our friend Nite is now
yeah.
a therapist, and I was able to kind of connect her to Silence the Shame. So I've been blessed to have long-standing relationships that were actually impactful and valuable. Um, so from yourself to be included, like,
Mm,
honestly, like a perfect example is, so I had been praying for a mentor. This is a true story.
mm-hmm,
God on my life. I've
mm-hmm.
been praying for a mentor, and I'm envisioning like some man in a suit with like millions of dollars who's going to show up and be down to teach and invest. Like, I
Right.
was praying for a mentor. I literally remember being in my apartment, like, God, I need a mentor. Um, and at the time, I was working on my website, freethevision.com at that time. And you were like, I'll help you do your website. So, like, me and you are talking. You was like, I could
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like put your website together. That ain't
Right.
really much of shit. I was like, oh my God, Candace, this is big. Thank you so much for me. Right. And so a friend of mine had been reaching out to me saying that, like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. I have maybe an opportunity for you. Like, let's speak. And every day that we would go to that we're supposed to speak, something would happen where we didn't speak. And it lasted for, like,
Mm,
let's say, like a week. In that time, we were doing a site. So the final night, I came over by your house, and you were like, come over by the house. I'm gonna show you how to work the back end of the site, and like so
mm,
that you can update it and do it yourself, whatever, whatever. So I came over
mhm.
by your house, and we kicked it, did our thing, and it was like, oh, cool. Site was done. I was feeling a new sense of purpose. It's one of those things where, like, in business, that's a part of your architecture of branding,
Mhm.
that you're clarifying you and your skill sets and what you do. You have a place to
Right.
put it all, right? And so I'm there kind of like, okay, cool. Now it all makes sense. I could send this and pitch this, yada, yada, yada. So while I'm at your house or getting ready to leave, that friend texted me and was like, "Hey, didn't forget you. Let's talk tomorrow morning." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I
Mm.
go home, I fall asleep because I left really late, and I dreamed about someone with mental illness. I didn't
Wow.
know who the person was, and you drove me to like my in my dream. I'm gonna tell you guys the dream, and this is why this is so powerful as far as relationships. But you drove me in my dream and dropped me off by my family's house, like a family house that's ours. When I went in, my father, who's now deceased, he was alive at the time, but my father was present, my mother was present, and my father was talking to a guy that I didn't know about mental health, and the guy had mental health challenges. Um,
Mm.
at the time, like I said, my father was alive, but his mother was deceased, and I would always see my grandmother in my dreams around, like around in like big moments of my life. You know what I'm saying? So my grandmother appeared in a dream, and I'm in the dream like, does anybody else see Nana? Like Nana's here, and nobody else saw her, and then she disappears. I wake up from that dream and it's the next morning within 10 minutes of me being awake. My friend calls me and she's like, "Hey, um, do you have an interest in mental health?"
Mm.
And I was like, she saw that I was writing articles at the time, and she ended up saying like, "Okay, well, Shanti Dawes is launching a platform called Silence the Shame, and I don't know if you're familiar with Shanti Dawes." And I was like, "Yeah, I know who Shanti Dawes is." And
Right.
so she was like, "Okay, well, she's looking for someone to write, do some publicity for it, like write an article." And I was writing for a couple of different platforms at the time. And so I was like, "Well, I'll write the article if you get me the meeting."
Mm.
And so I asked for a meeting with Shanti. And when I met with Shanti, now this has been years. When I met with Shanti, she told me, like, we instantly clicked. And then she ultimately told me that, like, hey, at this time, this organization don't have no money, but I will open up my networking resources to you. And if you know Shanti's background, she's legendary
Yeah.
in the business and field that I'm working in now and that I wanted to go to. And so she was like, and when we get paid, you'll be the first to get paid. And along the way, I'll ensure to get you some jobs doing, your thing.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, cool. So I obviously took that opportunity. Now here we are years later with a partnership with Sony. Silence the Shame has been my client since that moment. The
Right.
website being done, all of those things of how that dream manifested. But my circle
Wow.
instantly shifted. My
Wow.
circle instantly shifted by one person coming into my life. And so at that time,
Wow.
I had a lot of friends who are still my friends, some of, or like let's say 90% are still my friends, but I had a lot of people who didn't know how to get me there because that wasn't where they were going. So
Right.
I with me praying for a mentor, Shanti said the words to me, "I want to mentor you."
Mm.
So it was like everything accumulated into one relationship that became multiple relationships that I can link back to these moments. So a lot of times when it comes to like your circle and who you have around you, my aunt always told me that you need people who also have a vision because, and I don't care if their vision is to be the top janitor of the school who implements janitorial programming. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be in your field. But as long as they have a vision, they'll understand when yours starts to manifest. They
Yeah.
won't feel disconnected. They won't feel detached. They won't feel like, oh, you're bragging. They'll feel as if this is where you're supposed to be, and now we're arriving because it's inspiring, it's contagious to their own vision. So for me, at that time, my relationships were in transition. They're kind of there now, and so I've just started to study the pattern of my manifestation and kind of call it that, like a manifestation pattern.
Right.
And it is a shift. It's a shift to your relationships, your environments, your connections, your thought processes, all of those things. You'll feel it.
Right. Wow. So let's unpack that a bit because that was full of like pivotal
I'm long
moments.
winded.
No, no, no. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. You have prophetic dreams. Did you?
Yeah,
You know that, right?
yeah. I didn't name myself Vision. My friend actually named me that. So like the whole free the vision. All I did was add the in the middle, but
Oh,
the whole name came from friends who had been around me experiencing the dream aspect.
wow. Wow. Yeah. So that prophetic dream, I mean, it was a preview and it was um really a setup as well because and actually we talked about this earlier, but service and mentorship brought you into your place of promise in terms
Mm-hmm.
of being able to have someone who was willing to provide resources and a network because sometimes it's not money and sometimes God listen, his ways are not our ways. That's all I can say,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I guarantee you that you probably can't even put a dollar amount on what this relationship has been able to
Oh
bring
my
for
God.
me.
Listen, and I'll shout out my homegirl Tamiko who is watching, Tamiko Hope. And I also like pay attention to like just the when I say the signs are all around you, her last name's Hope, my name is really free. Like that's really a thing, right? But
Right.
Tamiko, me and her was having a conversation, and she was like, in context, it would make even more sense. But like, relationships are so much more valuable than dollars because why would you pay for something that you ultimately could get for free? Like, if you have the relationship with certain people, no matter where they are and what they're doing in their lives, there are certain things that like what you can do for a person's spirit and mental well-being is invaluable. So if you're
Mhm.
able to impact a person from that space
Mhm.
authentically and intentionally and spiritually, the dollar's gonna come because as
It's
long as they're
gonna
attached to
come.
something, they're gonna make sure that you're attached to something because they don't
Yes.
want to be without you as their asset. So I pray to
Yeah.
be an asset in every space that I enter. That's a literal prayer of mine.
Yes. Amen. Yes. It's divine connections. Because
Absolutely.
the divine connections brings the resources. It brings, you know, the assets, the money, the whatever you need. Um and starting with that. But you also had the wisdom of welcoming a mentor, right? You know, whether you
Hmm.
ask, whether you seek someone out or someone says they will mentor you. That was a powerful shift for me because as I was growing spiritually and in business, I knew I needed a mentor. I
You can
needed
feel
a
it.
mentor. Yeah, you do. And so it's just so amazing to see it all manifest in this way.
Hmm.
And now that you mentioned the whole thing about the website, I remember that whole day now. It's all
Uh-huh.
like coming back to my memory. And there's just been so many encounters on that path after that as we both have grown. But you also mentioned about the relationships that did not help or the
Mm.
things that you may have had to let go or you know as we grow our circles change, right? So what relationships did you had to let, you know, I'll just say take a back seat for now, like how what what were those relationships?
So I'm a people person by nature, and always have been. I would say that my professional spaces have probably, for the most part, always been intact. Like we
Yeah.
work together, we connect, people are gonna like me. My personal spaces, I realized that some of my own maybe insecurities, maybe insecurities, but senses of neediness made me
Mm,
attached to things that might not have been good, but they felt good at times.
yeah.
Um, and I think that, you know, there were certain people that and I'm still guilty of this in an evolving kind of way. Like I'm still going through it. At every stage, it changes, but there's still seeds and or residue, however you want to put it. But like for me, I can think of some specific people individually on both fronts where I made some major shifts in my life where they might have felt like my day ones, but they ended up
Mhm.
needing to not be my day ones. Like they didn't need to be my every. They might have been my day ones and still are, but they're like not my everydays. You get what I'm saying?
That's a
Like
great way to put it. Day
they
one, but
could
not
be
every day.
they can be my day one, but not my everyday because our
But not
lives
my
were
every
not
day.
going to the same place. We did not have the same
Ooh.
intentions. And sometimes when
Mm,
I would reach over to
mm,
share my like,
mm.
ain't it gonna be dope being on yachts and like doing da 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 da, right? You know, to envision and manifest and connect with them, they felt like, oh yeah, that'll be cool. But it was because they couldn't fathom that. That for them, that wasn't their life intention. They had no concept of how that could even be realistic. So for them, it was kind of
Right.
like, yeah, that's cool. And then they revert you back to like a conversation about nothing. So that kind of had to change in my life to find spaces where I think it's Eleanor Roosevelt that said, big minds discuss ideas, medium minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. I had to
Ooh, say
find
that
the
again, please. Say that again. Wow.
big minds discuss ideas,
Mhm.
medium minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. And
Mm.
so I had to find my big mind circle.
Yeah,
And I
big
was kind of like,
minds.
I needed
Big minds.
yeah, that's and I'm gonna do something with that. We're gonna talk about that later. But so I had to find my big mind circle and manifest from there. And it wasn't that it was any love lost. And then there were also some people that just were absolutely toxic for me. But it was kind of like I was in a space of going through feeling inadequate in spaces because my 3 years, I'm in the midst of them. And like, you know, when your money funny, so are you. You funny acting,
Mhm.
you know. So
Let's
like,
keep it real.
I'm broken, struggling through those 3 years, figuring it out, and that was okay. But at the time, there was a lot of times I needed bodies around just to make me feel comfortable, and a lot of times those bodies were okay with those circumstances, and so I
Mhm.
had to kind of get in the space with people that weren't okay with those circumstances, like I was feeling like not okay with it, so I could be encouraged to outgrow it. So that was kind of like those relationships.
Yeah, so many gems, so many gems.
I hope so.
People want to give you an offering for the day ones are not my everydays. Pass around the
Yeah.
offering plate on that one.
Hey, cash at me.
Exactly. We're gonna put the cash tag up because that's so true. That's so true. Wow, we can sit on that for a minute. And big minds. Who's ready for the big minds circle?
Yeah,
We're
for
ready for our
real.
big minds circle. Yes, this is so good. So you're navigating the entertainment industry, right?
Right.
And something that we talked about was networking, right? So
Mm,
when you're in your industry or your field and you have to start networking, you have to start expanding your circle and stuff. But
mm,
one thing I noticed is like it's become networking has become so transactional these days,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And it's like, I always hate the question, so what do you do? What do
Oh
you do?
man.
Right? Lord.
Mm,
And it's like, people are so attracted to your title, like, and what you can do for them. And they miss the whole person. Like, hello,
absolutely.
like I'm an actual person, I understand you have a need, but can we form a
And I
relationship?
might can do more for you than my title can. Like
Come
if you
on now.
actually like spoke to
Come
me,
on
you might
now.
realize that I might could do more for you than my title can. But if you're looking at my title, there's limitations with that because that reports to somebody else potentially. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly. Come on now. That's a whole word right there because you never know why that person could be in your life, right?
Hmm.
Like you have they can do more for you than their title ever could. Come on, free.
Hmm.
Another offering. Can we pass around
It's
the
true. It's
offering
so
plate?
true, man. It's so because I look at like even a relationship with Shanti or some of my other friends, like we went through the same experiences together without knowing that we were going to end up doing that. Like me and Shanti are
Mm,
like, she uses the word mentee and like brother, but like nah, like that's for real, like family, because at the time we was all struggling to see our vision come to life.
yeah,
And struggling does not always imply financially. Like we have lost family members that are our immediate people, our everydays
mhm,
together. You get what I'm saying? Back to back on dates that almost align. You know what I'm saying? Like we have been through a variety of ups and downs together.
yeah,
And
together.
I was
Mhm,
attracted because it was like, I'm gonna open up my black book to you. That attracted
mhm,
me, but I always knew that it was our conversation that made us um, realize that this was going to be something long lasting. Because at the end of the day, you know, where I end up going, ultimately, whatever room I'm going in, the people who have supported me and who love me are coming with me, because that's really what's going to keep me in the room, is how my support system has kept me feeling, or how my support system keeps me outside of the room. So it's kind of
wow,
like, you know, in this space that's not very understood, because this is entertainment.
mhm,
And literally, if you go Google the definition of entertainment, one of the words in the definition is distraction. So
ooh,
because a part of entertaining is to captivate you and make you feel and believe something, everybody's trying to sell you on what to make you feel. So a lot of
wow,
times when people come, they're trying to get to their space and they don't really care how, but they're just trying to get there. And
right,
you recognize it. You do. Sometimes it has. You got to. You know, sometimes business is transactional, but if you make a person feel good while they're there with you, that even transactional experience makes them feel like I want to do more with them no matter where I go, even if it's still on the business front. So,
exactly. Because what is a transaction, right? Like you're offering something of value. That's the
right,
transaction. So if I get something of value, that was a great transaction. Let's do business
absolutely.
again, right? Let's do business again. But if you're just trying to get something, that's when, it, that's not a mutual beneficial thing.
Man,
Um,
I've seen people's eyes literally light up. You know, like they'll go from having absolutely I swear this is a true story. They'll go from having absolutely no interest in you, like you'll be being introduced to them, and they'll be like, okay, okay, cool, cool, nice to meet you. And
right,
then the person goes, oh, you know, they're the ones who do X, Y, and Z, or they do so and so. And they'd be like, really? You know, it's so funny that you were doing. And it was
right,
like, well, you didn't even just want to know me. What was
right,
my name again? You didn't even listen. Like, but
right.
now all
You
of a
weren't
sudden
even
you
paying
perked up.
attention.
So you peep it.
Right. So, with this being like the nature of your industry, how have you been able to change your approach? Because I feel like it's when you're,
Mm.
especially when you're starting out, it's easy to think like, oh, okay, well, I need to get to this person, get to that person. But knowing you are the people person, right? You have mastered, the right way to kind of navigate. Like, how did you change your approach?
So for me, I am, as my sister said, I am, one of my flaws is that I do have an ego. I definitely have one.
Mhm.
Um, I'm an Aries and I have a New Jersey kind of background. So if I feel offended, I feel a little war driven. But in checking and working on it a bit, my approach changed because after you've gotten in enough rooms and you've seen them and you know that this is the space you want to work in, it's not really like everything becomes normal. Whether it's dysfunction, whether it's luxury lifestyle, whether it's success, anything you do for an extended amount of time will become normal to you. You may find gratitude in it, but it's normal. So my shift in how my approach changed was once I got in these rooms, at first I walked in them with the intentions of like, oh, that's so and so. I need to kind of let me
Right.
make sure that you put in some FaceTime with them and that you know them, right? And then you do that a few times, and then you recognize that like with certain people, that's not really getting you anywhere. They don't really care. And then I experienced something with someone who um, was willing to support me based on the opportunity I was attached to.
Mm,
And as soon as that opportunity ended, they went from being super accessible to no access at all, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, and so I made up my mind then, like, and they're not the only person that I did this with. Whenever I'm genuinely a nice, approachable person, so I'll kind of be like, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, sometimes I remember you, most times I'll try to remember your name, but I'm not always great at it. But I will try to, yeah, 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 talk to you and always be approachable. Um, when I recognized that I would do that, and people would reintroduce themselves to me, like after the 20th time of us meeting, and or having a very intimate meeting, even where it was just us and one other person at dinner, but you still reintroduce it. Or like when I recognized that lack of, connection once they no longer saw anything in you, I start speaking to those people. And when I say speaking to them, not in a way of like, oh, we can't speak at all, but I'm not reaching out. When I see you in a room, I'm not approaching and putting in FaceTime. And a bit of my ego was that like, if they speak, it's gonna be because they speak to me, and it worked. That anything, I'm a believer in treating people, and I don't say this in a condescending way, but like children. Everything that you give a child, an adult needs encouragement,
Mm,
reprimand. You know what? This was I gave you this, and I thought that this would work and be better for you. It's not working. Let me take this away and let's see how that works for you. And when you take it away, you start to notice people like, well, something's moved. So I changed my
yeah.
approach by treating people like all of the skill sets that you need to provide a child for a child to kind of be successful, and just kind of removing expectations from circumstances and allowing God to do what God does, because in my belief it's not up to the people. If it's somebody at that door that doesn't want me in it, when I come to it they won't be there. It's my belief. You know what
Mm,
I'm saying? So it's up to God ultimately where I end up. So
absolutely. Wow. That's powerful. I love that because you release the outcome of the interaction, right? Because what people don't realize that they are intentionally or unintentionally doing is they're manipulating the situation, or they're manipulating the person to get what they want out of it, right?
hmm
Um, and sometimes that's all you get. Like, okay, you got what you want, but you may have forfeited of something that could have been so much more greater,
hmm
because you forced your own outcome. But
hmm
I love just allowing God to place the right people on your path, and to open the right doors. Because you said something that was so profound, that every person that you encounter has a purpose.
hmm
So it may not be what you want out of it, but it's ultimately leading you to your destination.
hmm
And I think we have lost that. Um,
And I'll say these two very quick things. I won't be long winded. This is more so, and I said this to you when we did our like prep call. It's more so creating boundaries of value. Like, okay, for me,
yes.
you know, I know that at the end of the day, you're just a person like I'm just a person. Maybe you've done it a little longer. People do deserve respect, but I respect the person versus the title. Again, like it's not about the titles.
Right.
And when you create those boundaries of value, it's kind of like, you know what? At the end of the day, me and God already discussed the outcome. Literally. Like, me and God already discussed this. So I'm not surprised that I'm even talking to you. I'm like excited because it means that God is responding, but I'm not necessarily
Yes.
surprised. So, like, if you have that kind of boundary sanction set up for yourself to kind of like, all right, y'all want to act funny? That's okay. You're going to continue to excel. You'll be a mainstay. And those people will come back. And when they come back, just tax them with an inconvenience tax. That's how I kind of handle my business. Like, that whole yesterday's price ain't today's price thing. Like, okay, relationships, it could have gotten you in much closer to the line of free. Whereas now it's an expensive tax because now I realize the type of thing I'm going to have to deal with by dealing with you. You get what I'm saying? So I have to like charge for even that down the line.
Right.
So
Wow.
it's,
um, yeah, so many people are getting so much from this conversation. So
I hope.
this is so good. I want to shift to family relationships
Mm,
as we get to the end of our segment, because family relationships are so pivotal on your journey of purpose. And you talked a lot about your parents,
mm-hmm,
and how they've played a role in your journey. And this is for everyone. We have people of all ages here.
mm,
So this is, we can all think about our parents, right? But some of you all have adult children too who are on their journey of purpose, right? And entrepreneurship is a purpose, okay? Um,
mm-hmm,
so this is really going to speak to everyone on both sides, like parent to child and child to parent, right? So
mm-hmm.
what was your relationship like with your parents on this journey?
So I have supportive parents in different ways. My father, growing up, was had always all my life been very supportive. When I would watch things on TV and be like enamored with it, he'd be like, you like that free, that looks fun. He was like, you want to do that? And I'd be like, yeah. He was like, that's just a job. That person that you're watching just got up, just like your mother does and we do to get up and go to work. They're at work right now. That's their job. You can have
Yeah.
that job.
Mhm.
So because he kind of put in that context, that kind of helped me. And then my mother had been supportive in the way of not wanting me to fail, and that was um, at most times, because your parents like they know their children. At most times, that was in the form of whatever support she could provide to make sure that that didn't happen. But
Mhm.
but there's oftentimes too where both of my parents, out of their own fears of not wanting their child to be lost too long,
Mhm.
um, they would caution you against things that really was the time that you were supposed to be being patient because they have not seen what you're trying to do yet. And the God's honest truth, especially working in entertainment, which is a business that, like I said, is the land of make believe. Everybody's pretending. Nobody believes that that's almost possible. Like only a select few make it in that space.
Right.
So for them, it was a uncertain path to work toward an executive or a person of impact in that space. So ultimately, there were times where I remember having to tell my parents that, like, when a child is just learning to walk and you're behind them, like with your
Mhm.
hands out, you're kind of like, oh, okay, okay, like I got
Mhm.
you in case you go
Watch
to fall
John right
backwards.
now.
Yeah, right. So because they're active and they're trying,
Yeah.
um, they had metaphorically, that's what it felt like they were doing behind me. And it came a time where I had to tell them to like, I need you like to remove your hands
Mm.
because it's an implication that's doing something to me psychologically, making me
Mhm.
feel as if I'm gonna fall or I am
Like, you
falling.
think I'm gonna fall.
Like because you think that I'm gonna fall, I think that I'm falling. When the truth
Mm.
is, because of this experience, I'm not falling at all. This is just a part of it. Like
Yeah.
broke is not broke nor rich really is a, a barometer to whether you've gotten it or not. Some
Wow.
of the wins are for nurturing and some of those wins are for to be marinated in. Like me and Shanti had to build Silence the Shame. So
Mhm.
at the onset, if I came to my parents and was like, I got a mentor and she ain't
Mhm.
paying the day, but she said she's gonna help me.
Right.
To them, it's kind of
I'd
like,
be like, "What is this?
go get
What
your
is
broke
going
ass
on?"
out of here, boy. Go get a job, right?
Right.
Like that's what it sounds like. So
Yeah.
I had
Wow.
to find ways to manage all of this is managing people. You and I'm thankful that you put me here. I'm thankful that you put me in this particular conversation because relationships is not only my industry, but that's what God has given me as my life path. And I
Mhm.
feel like, I had to equally manage my parents like I would have to manage anybody else, from artists to director to labels to anything that has to work. I had to find
Yeah.
the information that my parents got and the information that they didn't get, and then show them just results. And even still with the results, I understand that they don't quite get what I do because it's not the structures that they grew up understanding. So,
Yeah.
last thing about my parent, and I'll say this for my father. I remember one conversation that we were in, before, two conversations, one before he passed, but one a while before. And he said to me, Free, I don't think complaining, like he said, it's a difference between complaining and explaining. And he asked me how I was doing, and I explained it to him. And he was like, Free, just enjoy it, all of it. Like,
Mhm.
now he was a Gemini, so that came and went, this feeling. But he was like, just enjoy it, all of it. The ups, the downs, the times that you broke while you're figuring it out. When you get it, like, just take the time to enjoy it. And him literally saying that was the permission that I needed, that I never knew that I needed. I didn't know. Like, once he said it, it was like, oh, damn, it don't feel like I'm failing you now. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now I have permission to do it. I have permission to actually get out here and make it happen. And he asked me, you know, when his Gemini side hit, and he was trying to tell me to go, like, I really wish that you would have been able to get this job because it pays X amount of money. And, I'm like, Dad, I'm at the best place in my life right now, and I'm the closest that I've ever been. And,
Mm.
if I did that, I'd be tripping over a quarter trying to get a dime.
Mhm.
And he was like, okay, I understand it, but what does it look like? And I was like, well, I think I can go all the way. He said, what does all the way look like? And this is the last conversation that was a like sit down that me and my dad used to do,
Wow.
before he passed. And I explained to him what all the way looks like. And I was so happy that he asked me because it made me have to, um, solidify my clarity. And after I explained it to him, he was like, you know what? I believe you're gonna get all of this. Like now that I see this, like, yes, that makes sense. And not more than like within the month that he was in transition, um, all these doors in my life just opened up and things started happening. So the bittersweet moment is that, like, hey, it's happening, but you're losing something at the same time. So it's a very humbling experience
Yeah.
because you can't get too caught in celebration. It makes you keep,
Right.
a center of what matters.
Right. Wow. And I just want to thank your dad. I want to honor him today for just that statement. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey and how that freed you up to just
Hmm.
go for it, like, and to know that that was the permission you needed, because we all think about it in the back of our minds, right? Like,
Hmm.
do people think I'm crazy? Is my mom worried about me? Is my dad like, it's kind of unexplainable, the experience of bringing a vision to life.
Hmm.
And no
You have to
one,
be crazy.
you
You
have to
have to
be
be,
crazy,
because you're
right?
the only one who
Yes.
can see it. You're the
You're
only
the
one.
only one who
You're
can see
delusional until
it.
it happens.
Yes. You're the only one who can see it. But you know what? Every vision has an appointed time.
Mm,
And we're going to talk about this in the spiritual shift today, because it is the appointed time for many visions to manifest.
mm,
But until you get there, it's the hero's journey, right? It's the what some people say the struggle, but I'm not even going to call it a struggle anymore.
mm,
It's the manifestation
it's
process.
the shift.
It's the shift. Thank you. It's the shift.
Hmm.
It's the shift, and someone is saying, "Wow, what does all the way look like?"
Hmm.
Thank
What
you.
does it look
Thank you.
like? You have to
Thank
define
you.
it.
Define it
Hmm.
for yourself. Just sit and think right now. If you were to go all the way for it, what does that look like?
And I have to share this, and I know that we're at the about the end of it, but this is what saved me, right? I always say to myself, when you envision all the way, like if everybody like was to close their eyes and envision their life at the
Mhm.
absolute best, like
At the
I don't care what
absolute
you
best.
at the absolute best. I don't care what you're wearing. I don't care
Yes.
what your house looks like. I'm talking about what you feel like, man, I can't wait until this vision. When you close your eyes and envision that and you see it and how good it makes you feel, knowing that that's possible and excited to make that
Yes.
happen,
Yes.
everything that you see in that vision that is currently not in your life means that at some point it will have to go. So if you get married to the things that you see around you, then
Right.
it will slow you down from seeing all of the things that was in that vision. Because in that
Right.
vision, you might not look the way you look. So
Right. You may
if
not
I'm
live where you live.
you
You
don't
may
live
not
where you live. You don't drive
listen.
what you drive. So that means
Right.
when your car might be giving you trouble, you might be feeling kind of like, damn. But the
Right.
truth is, maybe you're on the way to the car. But that car has to
Listen.
leave at some point. So like I had to kind of like deal with my psyche in that kind of space of like, you know what, if I look smaller, that means at some point I'm losing weight. If I
Right.
look if I have nicer clothes, that means at some point I won't be wearing this t-shirt. Like all of
Right.
these different things, or I will, but still, like all of these things have to evolve. And in order for them to evolve, they have to be moving and removing almost simultaneously. So that
Yeah.
was my shift.
Yes. And you have to remain detached. Because if you again, if when I talk about the relational shift, I talk about how I had to let go of all of my attachments, all of them,
Hmm.
because your attachments is what's keeping you in your present place. Like
Hmm.
you're feeling stagnant, it's because you're attached to something.
Hmm.
And some people, and they mean the best things, but like just the comment of go get a job, like that's your comfort zone, that's your security, that's not mine. I'm not worried about that right now. God is my provider. And I have the courage to go for it right now, and
Absolutely.
you may not have had that courage or the privilege to. And I always
Absolutely.
acknowledge that, because I have to really just share how we have, especially our generation, we have had the privilege to go for our dreams,
Absolutely.
because a lot of our parents were in survival mode. And we talked about that. We're in survival mode, just keeping the lights on, making it happen, making sure that we had a roof over our head, food to eat. We went to college, we did whatever we had to do, because that's what they were taught. Their
Hmm.
parents, our grandparents, what was their ultimate dream? For their kids to go to college. That
Hmm.
that was as far as they could see, because of the limitations of our society at the time. But
Absolutely.
now we have the privilege to go for our dreams, and guess what?
Because of that, though, because
Because
of
of that.
that, it
Yes.
was so that we
Yes,
could have this privilege. They just didn't realize that we would then need it.
exactly.
Yeah, or exercise it.
Exactly. And now what God has revealed to
Hold on
me
one.
is, now what God has revealed to me is we all have that privilege now. It's for all generations. It's for all generations. He's releasing all limitations. He's releasing all of the limitations for us. And so we don't have to be bound by the traditional, path of going to getting a job, going to retirement, get your 401k, and then,
Hmm.
we have no limitations anymore. So this is for all generations. That we
Absolutely.
all now have the privilege to go for our dreams. But we have to trust God along the way, along these many steps of faith, because you will not be able to see what you have visioned.
That's right.
You won't be able to see it.
And because you're the person that has to build it, it's okay that people don't understand. And I had to learn
Yeah,
that as
it's
well.
okay.
As well, it's okay that they don't understand. Don't understand. It's like coming into a space like which is them. actually trying to kick me out of the room because they're trying to paint in here. But it's like coming into a space and you go to a restaurant and it says, "Excuse my mess," like we're
Yeah.
renovating. So that's kind of what the person is doing as they're building their vision. They're renovating, and it doesn't look good until you see the finished product, and then everyone's happy. So
Yeah,
be okay. You have to be comfortable with your renovation space.
you do. You do. Wow. Well, Free, this was such a pleasure. This
Always,
was so
anytime.
very good. And you know what? These are, just one of many conversations that we've had together. I mean, and everyone that I have invited to the summit, I have walked with them in some form or fashion. And
Hmm.
so I know that you live, what it means, to not only make the relational shift, but just to make the shift, period.
Hmm.
You are one of those brave people that has pursued your vision.
Hmm.
Um, no matter how bold it is, right? No matter how big it is. And I do believe and see that it's coming to fruition. And I'm
Oh,
so
thank you.
excited for you. Yeah.
Likewise, likewise. You keep me inspired, and I've known you since we were, I don't know, about 13, 12, 13.
I
And
know.
to see all of this happening right now and just the way that God is moving in your life not only inspires me and encourages me, it truly makes me proud. Like, and no one's surprised. No one's surprised. This has been you since then. But they are more surprised about me, for sure. They're more surprised about me. But like, no, I'm just so thankful that you've taken the courage to do this and then reach back to us,
Yes,
because this is how our conversations sound all the time. So I'm grateful to
all
do
the
this
time.
with and in front of others. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. You're so welcome. And until the next,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you
Yes,
so
you're
much.
welcome.
Thank you so much. I am honored, and it has taken a lot of courage to get here. So I appreciate that so much.
You're welcome.
And until the next conversation, I
Yes,
know we'll
yes,
be
yes.
talking again soon.
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Yes,
And thank
you're
you,
welcome.
everyone, for tuning
You're
in.
welcome. Yes, thank you. Everyone is getting so many gems. So
Hmm.
I will be sending an offering.
Okay,
Is
right.
that
Follow
right?
Free the Vision. Follow Free the
Follow
Vision.
Free Division
Hmm.
on all social platforms, freethevision.com. I'm going to
Hmm.
share everything that you share with me. I will be sharing to everyone who registered today, everyone who's watching. And I wish many, many blessings
Same
coming.
to you. And love the kids.
Absolutely.